Hey guys, today we are going to continue talking about graphing coordinates, and we're going to specifically focus on finding the slope and y-intercept in an equation. The essential question is, how do I find slope, what is slope, and how do I find the y-intercept, and what is the y-intercept? We're going to review, and that review is going to lead directly into what we're doing today, finding the slope and y-intercept, and the rest of the time will be yours to work on that graphing coordinates assignment. Remember that graphing coordinates assignment from yesterday will be due March 1st, and the distributive property assignment from last week is due tomorrow, the 24th. And you guys have 37 more days till the end of the term or until spring break, and you have 4 more school days left of this midterm. So your midterm grades will be due on March 2nd, so you only have 4 more school days to get your grades exactly where you want them to be for midterms. Okay, we're going to go ahead and review how to create a table of values. And this is something that you guys worked on yesterday in your graphing coordinates assignment. So I'm going to go over this quickly because we did it yesterday. When you create a table of values for an equation, remember you get to choose whatever numbers you want to represent x. I like to choose nice, easy numbers. I make sure that I have at least one negative number in there. So I chose -1 because that's kind of an easy number to work with. I chose 0 because that's also pretty easy, and then 1. But you can choose whatever numbers you would like. So if you were wondering how I came up with those numbers, I just chose random numbers. All right, then you're going to use the numbers you chose and replace it with the x in your equation. Solve that equation and then write your answer over here on the right-hand side of your screen. So for this first one, I chose -1 as my number, so I'm going to write y equals 5, replace the x with -1 minus 3. And I'm going to go ahead and solve this equation quickly. So 5 times -1, remember order of operations, I have to do my multiplication first, is just -5. I have -3 left. -5 minus 3 is just -8. So my answer over here is -8. Now I have to do the same thing, except I am going to replace the x with a 0. So going as fast as I can to make this video as short and concise as possible. 5 times 0, just 0. I still have my -3. 0 minus 3 is -3. So my y equals -3. Just going to write that answer over here on the right-hand side of my screen. Now I'm going to do the exact same thing, except I'm going to replace the x with a 1 because that was the number I chose on my table of values. 5 times 1, 5 minus 3, that is just 2. So I put +2 over here on the right-hand side of my screen. All right, and then on your AccuPlacer exam, you will have to graph your table of values. So we're going to go over that super duper quick, and it is also going to help us with finding slope and y-intercept, the topic we're learning about today, to help you complete the rest of your assignment. All right, so when you're graphing points, remember your x is going to be on this line right here, like you're going either left or right, and your y, you're either going up or down. Oops. Okay, so for this first one, I have my x, I have my y. I'm going to go over -1, so to the left 1 square, down to -8, and draw my point. I have my x and I have my y right here, so I'm going 0, so up or left and right 0, so I'm just going to stay right here. And then I'm going to go down -3, 1, 2, 3, and draw my point. All right, I have my x, I have my y right here. I am going to go over 1, up 2. Perfect. Now I'm going to try my very best to draw a straight line between all these points. Not too bad. A little crooked, but that's okay. All right, this is going to lead into what we need to do today, the new material. We're talking about slope and y-intercept, and we're going to go ahead and start with the slope. You've probably heard of slope before in your other math classes, and slope is just rise over run. It could also be defined as the rate of change. It could also be defined as the difference between 2 points on a line. There are a few different ways that you can find slope. And there's not really like a best way. It just kind of depends on the problem that you're working with, the information you have available for that math problem. So option number one, we could use a graph to count how many spaces you go up or down. If you're going up, it's positive. If you're going down, that would be a negative number. And then you would divide that number by how many spaces you go left or right. If you're going left, it's going to be a negative number. If you're going right, it's going to be a positive number. And if you forget about what direction is what value, just look at your graph. If you're going up, positive, down, negative, left, negative, right, positive. All right, so if I'm going to be using my graph to find slope, I'm going to take the number I'm either going up or down, divide it by the number I'm going left or right. And if I'm going up, I'm going positive. So I'm going to go ahead and just start with this -8, and I'm going to count how many I'm going up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I went up 5, so I know it's going to be a positive 5. Now I need to figure out how many squares I need to go left or right to get to that next point, and that's going to go on the bottom. All right, so I'm going to the right 1, and because I'm going to the right, I know it's positive. So 5 over 1, or our slope rise over run. If we were to simplify that, 5 divided by 1 is just 5. So that would be your slope. That is one way to find slope. All right, let's say that you have a problem and you don't have a graph. You just have like this table of values right here. You can still find slope, and the process of doing that is going to be pretty similar. You're going to figure out the difference between your two y coordinates, and that would be your bottom number. Your top number would be the difference between your two x coordinates. All right, so I need to take -8 minus -3. Okay. I'm going to use my calculator just to make sure that I don't steer you guys in the wrong direction. Okay, that answer is -5. All right, so that goes on the top. On the bottom, I need to figure out the difference between -1 minus 0. So -1 minus 0 is just -1. All right, and if I were to simplify this fraction right here, the answer would just be 5. Perfect. That's super reassuring because this slope is the same as the line. Perfect. That means that our answer is correct. That's another way that you can find slope if you didn't have a graph and you only had a table of values. Sorry, my screen is shaking so much. Just erasing. All right. This last one is my absolute favorite way to find slope because it's the easiest. Let's say that you didn't have a table, you didn't have a graph, and all you had was an equation. You can find slope by just looking at the number attached to the variable. Okay, so in this equation, our slope is just 5. Easy peasy. We didn't have to do any dividing, subtracting, multiplication. We just literally looked at the equation and we could find it. Okay, so if you have all three resources available, if you had a graph, if you had a table of values, and you had the equation, the easiest way to find slope would probably be just looking at the equation and looking for the number in front of the variable. All right. So if we were to look at this equation right here, our slope would just be 2. It's the number in front of the variable. This one, our slope is 1/2. This one, a little tricky. Remember, there would be like an invisible 1 in front of this x, so our slope would just be 1. Okay, slope, easy enough. Y-intercept, how do we find it? Again, there's 3 different options, and none of these options is better than the other, just depends on the problem that you're using. So option 1, you can use the graph to find out where the line touches the y-axis, and that's going to be the y-intercept. The y-intercept is just the point where the line crosses or touches the y-axis. So at any point where the line touches or crosses this yellow line right here. So you can use the graph to find out where it touches the y-axis. That would be this line right here. And if we look at our graph, it is right here at -3. Perfect. So that's kind of easy, just looking at a graph. All right, let's say that you don't have a graph and all you have is this table of values. You would just put 0 in for x, and whatever your answer is would be your y-intercept. And that one's kind of easy too, especially if you already have 0 in your table of values. Lastly, here is another easy way to do this, to find the y-intercept. If you didn't have the graph, if you didn't have a table of values, you could look right here at the end of your equation. If your equation's in slope y-intercept form, we have our slope right here, and then whatever is after the slope would be your intercept, right? And because there is the negative or the minus sign in front of this 3, our y-intercept would just be -3. So if we were to go to those same examples that we looked at for slope, our y-intercept for this one would just be -5. Our y-intercept for this one would be +65. Our y-intercept for this one would be +3. Okay, so you might run into a problem, especially on question 11, 12, 13, and 14, where your equation is not in point slope form. Here's what you need to do. Solve for y, then identify the slope, then identify the y-intercept. Once you solve for y, all you have to do is look for the slope in the equation and look for the y-intercept. Remember, the slope is just going to be the number in front of the x, and the y-intercept is just going to be the number at the very, very end. Okay, so we're going to do 2 of those together as an example, and then you guys are free to go. Okay, so solving for y. It's just like your 2-step equations. I want to get this y by itself, but I have this -3x in the way. I need to cancel it out on this side, and whatever I do to this side to cancel out that -3x, I have to do to the other side. So if I'm going to cancel out -3x, I'm going to do the opposite of -3x, and I'm going to plus 3x. Perfect. Those would cancel out because -3x plus 3x would just be 0. But if I do it to that side, I have to do it to the other side. So I'm going to add my 3x over here. And I have y equals 5 plus 3x. And this could be close enough to your y-intercept form. If you want to be more precise, you could just switch around, put this 3x in front, and because this is a +5, we could do +5. Okay, but either one is acceptable for me. All right, number 12. Same thing. We want to get this y by itself, but we have an 8x in the way, and we have a +7 in the way. All right, so I'm going to cancel them out on this side, but whatever I do to this side, I have to do to that side to keep this equation balanced. So I'm going to go ahead and start by getting rid of this 8x. It's a positive 8x, so I'm just going to subtract 8x. And if I do it to that side, got to do it to this side. All right, y equals 14 minus 8x. Okay, I forgot the +7 in there. So now I need to get rid of this +7, and I'm going to do the opposite of +7, and I'm going to -7. And if I do it to one side, got to do it to the other side. So I have y equals. Okay, I can't combine this -8x with this -7, but I can combine it with this 14. 14 minus 7, just 7, minus 8x. So that could be close enough to your y-intercept form, but if you want to go ahead and switch it so it looks exactly like this one right here, you could just take this 7 and put it at the end of the equation. And because it's a +7, we would just have y equals -8x plus 7. All right, and then our slope would be this -8, and our y-intercept would be this +7. If you guys have any questions, feel free to ask. This will help you with 13 and 14 on your graphing coordinates assignment. And remember, that's going to be due March 1st. If you have any questions, Call or text that Google Voice phone number, email me, or pop in during your scheduled block on the Google Meets.